Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay on Boxing. Thanks for clicking through, and I'm here giving you a bit of a roundup of the week's action here. And man, was there quite a bit of it. We had a massive upset, some close calls, a couple of solid knockouts. Obviously, a little bit of controversy, as is the case in boxing. And so let's get into it. For some quick results and a very entertaining fight card in London at the SSE Arena, featherweight unknown turned breakout fighter Mauricio Lara shocked the boxing world, stopping previously unbeaten former titleist Josh Warrington after 9 relatively one-sided rounds. While Warrington had moments, he was a beaten fighter by the fourth round when he was badly hurt and dropped. And after another handful of pretty punishing frames, Warrington was flattened out and the referee halted the action correctly. I mean, he probably could have done it a few rounds earlier. Also on the card in junior featherweight action, Zelfa Barrett won a highly controversial decision over veteran Kiko Martinez. More on that in a bit. Lee Wood picked up the British featherweight title with a tremendous performance over Reese Mold, stopping him in the ninth. Dalton Smith looked levels above Ishmael Ellis in a junior welterweight clash, stopping him after 3 rounds of action. It was correctly stopped by his corner, as a matter of fact. So props to them for getting that call correct. And also, young prospect Hopi Price soundly defeated no hoper Daniel Mendoza over the 6 round distance. The junior featherweight used incredible speed and skill to show more poise than his experience or age would actually indicate, which I liked about him. Wish he had a little more pop in his shots, but hopefully that can develop as his man strength develops as well, because he's a pretty young kid. Ghanaian Richard Comey re-cemented his spot at lightweight, picking up a solid stoppage win over Jackson Marinas at the MGM Grand Conference Center in Las Vegas, which also aired on ESPN. Coming back from his devastating loss to 135-pound kingpin Teofimo Lopez, Comey took up a bit to get going, but ultimately looked a serious threat with his performance, improving to 30-3 with 27 KOs. Adam Lopez rallied late to defeat Jason Sanchez in featherweight action. Heavyweight Jared Anderson stopped Kingsley Abe in the 6th round, improving the big man's record to 8-0, all of his fights ending within the distance, so he might be someone to watch in the heavyweight ranks as well. Also featured on the card was Shane Mosley Jr., who stopped Mexico's Christian Olivas in 5 frames. Then we had a little more action in Indio, California, with Joseph Diaz and Shavkat Rakhimov battling to a reasonable draw. I mean, it probably could have gone either way, and splitting the decision that way kind of seemed to make sense. Diaz started and finished pretty well. There was some middle rounds there that seemed to go Rakhimov way a little bit more, but I mean, it really did depend on exactly who you felt won what round. And ultimately, a draw did seem fairly reasonable. With the result, a portion of the junior lightweight title Diaz once held remains vacant, as he was stripped for missing weight and couldn't maintain it, and Rakhimov failed to win the fight, so he didn't gain it. Also on the card, you had Brian Castano pick up a world title, dominating and outworking now former junior middleweight talents Patrick Teixeira over 12 rounds. Junior featherweight Ronnie Rios improved his record as well to 33-3 with 13 KOs, beating Oscar Negrete soundly over the 10 round distance. Some of my biggest takeaways there, to be perfectly honest with you, there was quite a bit as you watched all of these different stories develop over this weekend. I mean, the biggest one I think is safe to say, as most people probably is the Josh Warrington situation. And I was thinking about it, and it's really quite insane. I don't know if a fighter who has 20, 30, 40 fights can say their career has ultimately come down to just the last 7 fights, where it's you might have seen everything this person has to give the game potentially in 7 fights. It's a very strange one. If you go back to his bout with Kiko Martinez, as the aforementioned fighter, who seems to be in all these UK shows, back in 2017, he gets a majority decision in a fight some thought he could have lost. It could have gone either way at the very least. Then you skip ahead a fight or two, and he's defeating the favored Lee Selby for a title and defending it well against the heavily favored Carl Frampton. Now he's riding high. I mean, he's winning potentially Fighter of the Year for 2018. I mean, you're forgetting about the Martinez fight. He looks like he is the best featherweight in the world. But then, off of those incredible highs, he gets gifted a decision against Kid Galahad in 2019, in my personal opinion, fights a stay busy fight, and then gets beaten to bits by Lara. It's one of those situations where, in the span of, again, roughly 4 years, a little less, we may have seen the worst, the absolute best, and potentially the end of Warrington at a high level. Because, make no mistake about it, while I hope he's able to come back, I obviously hope he's safe and nothing bad happened to him, that is the sort of fight you can have a real hard time coming back from. It was a fight where You obviously want the corner and the referee to give a fighter all the chance he could possibly have, but it might have been a bit too much, and it could have cost him long term. For Warrington's sake, let's hope he's can find a way to regroup. Obviously, and to his credit, Warrington seemed very humble in defeat, and obviously was very concerned with letting people know he does plan on continuing. Of course, I still feel I've got what it takes to achieve my dreams and my goals. The Leeds Warrior not over yet. It's a bump in the road, but it happens to the best of us. It'll only give me more motivation to come back even stronger. Full credit to Mauricio Lara. So again, took it well, and hopefully he can bounce back and do it safely. But again, it's one of those situations where you see such a everyone has just a minimal amount of time for a peak, and his is really clearly defined, and hopefully he can flesh that out a little bit more. Next thing here was after his grueling fight with Shavkat Rakhimov on Saturday, I saw some people commending and even defending Joseph Diaz, who was, as mentioned earlier, lost his title on the scale the previous day. And I understand the desire to go easy on a fighter that showed some heart and determination in a fight, but let's be real about what we saw. We saw a fighter that hasn't been living the life, that has let his weight get way out of hand at times, that didn't just miss the weight but looked soft at the weigh-in, which he did. He didn't look like a fighter who had trained his absolute hardest. So the defense is he's either, outgrown the division, or that lockdown made the final few pounds difficult to drop because in the bubble, as a fighter enters the area in which he will fight, he doesn't have all of the amenities he once would have, and thus cutting is a different process. And I get that. And that's all well and good, but the problem is Diaz made this infinitely harder on himself by gaining excessive weight in the last year to begin with, by not living the life, by having legal issues, by doing all the sort of things that would distract you, that would ultimately lead you to having a situation like this occur. So if it's outgrowing the division, it's only made worse by poor dietary decisions and decisions in general. And if he's been making better decisions, he wouldn't have to aggressively cut so much loose weight to begin with. He'd be closer to his fighting weight, the way someone like Floyd Mayweather has, where he never really gains that much, so he's never really having to cut. He can just train. And he himself said that he didn't want to risk his health, which to me indicates that he knew he just left himself with too much weight to lose before the weigh-in and opted not to do it. In his post-fight interview, that's exactly what he said. So I don't believe that this is something where we need to feel so sorry for the guy. Again, if he'd been living the exact perfect life, if he had never missed weight before, which he has done, then it'd be different. But that's not the situation here. And so we need to reserve that sort of sympathy for fighters who I believe personally deserve it a little bit more. Brian Castano looked very solid over the weekend as well, soundly defeating Patrick Teixeira and capturing his portion of the 154-pound title in the process, which of course can help set up a unification showdown with world titleist Jermell Charlo, which I think is obviously going to be a phenomenal fight. Aside from the fact that this will be for all the gold, it's good news due to the fact that both have styles and almost certainly gel well and will create an action-packed fight. Sometimes we get those Lomachenko-Rigondeaux fights where there's significance to them and there's prestige behind both names, and it sounds like a great idea and concept. Two highly skilled, highly decorated amateurs with impressive professional resumes. But then when they get together, it looks like two, counterpunchers trying to fight each other. This, on the other hand, is more action than accolades. They have certainly some resume to them, but they have a style that could really be compelling to watch. Brian Castano is promoted by TGB Promotions, and Charlo somewhat self-promotes and works with advisor Al Heyman, who has a working relationship with TGB. So all of that to say this should be a fight that can be made and relatively easily. So let's hope it can, come to fruition there. And I think it's important that we remember one thing very clearly here in terms of my takeaways. Moving on here. When it comes to robberies, people need to remember one thing. You can lose a fight, legitimately, a close fight, and still be robbed. And that's something I think people need to understand. Because I'm talking, of course, about Zelfa Barrett versus Kiko Martinez. And I started seeing some people defend the decision, some of whom just thought Barrett really won every single round, which I have no time for you, so goodbye. But there was other people who were saying, well, I did have Barrett, just barely nicking the fight, and I think he did win ultimately. And and so they had this kind of idea or this impression that meant that it's okay then to not give a foreign fighter a chance of even winning. No, I'm sorry. Even if Barrett, in your mind, did win the fight, which I don't believe he personally did, but even if he did, the fact of the matter that when Kiko Martinez stepped off the plane onto English soil for that fight, if he was not given a fair shake, the 100% fair shake that he deserves as a fighter, as an athlete, then he's robbed. You've already robbed him from the moment he lands, the moment he signs the contract at that point. So, people need to understand that this isn't just about, well, they're giving him all the close rounds. No, if he's not given the exact fair shot he deserves, that's within control of the judges and the officials and everyone involved, he's being robbed. Now, foreign fighters tend to always have a little bit of that happening. They're fighting in a foreign land. They have fans that are against them. The promoters, can have them come out a little bit earlier. Their fighter has to, can get a little bit warmer, a little bit longer, make them cool down. There's all this little stuff that people do. I get it. I understand it's never going to be completely level. But that means that the officials in place, who are there to protect and ensure the fighters are getting a fair shake, need to do their job even more so to ensure it's as fair as it can be and to counterbalance that. And when you again see a guy like Kiko Martinez, who was credited for winning 2 rounds of a fight that he pressed all of the action in and landed more of the shots in, and seemed to damage his opponent more than the other way around, how can that happen? It's just not fair, and that's where you realize that a fighter truly has been robbed. When Barrett's own promoter Eddie Hearn comes out and claims he's disgusted by the verdict, you know you have a problem. I thought 118, 111 is absolutely disgusting for Kiko Martinez. How are we going to bring in foreign fighters to this country when they get absolutely zero credit for their performance? 118, 111, he might as well not bothered. And that's exactly the truth. There was 2 cards that said 118, 111, which is an absolutely absurd scorecard. That is crazy. 116, 113, the other card there by Howard Foster is a little more reasonable. There were some close rounds there. I'm not saying this was some kind of, you know, just absolute whitewashing for Kiko Martinez. Again, I'm willing to listen to an argument for either fighter both way in a close fight. But if anything, if anyone deserved a 118, 111 card in his favor, it was probably Martinez, who was the most consistent fighter of the two. So at the end of the day, this doesn't help UK's fight scene when you have fighters who I presume are going to have to think second and third times about whether or not they want to go there for a little extra money to have their career set back a lot more than it should be. In any event, more positive stuff here. We got some pretty good fights coming up this weekend, some really good ones, as a matter of fact. On Showtime, American Adrian Broner will make his long-awaited return when he takes on Giovanni Santiago in junior welterweight action. This taking place at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And on the undercard, heavyweights Dominic Brazil will face Otto Wallen. And we'll have predictions for both of those fights coming up later this week. Should be interesting. See if whether or not Broner can make the weight and how he looks at the weight if he does. You'll also have Robert Easter in some action against Ryan Martin at junior welterweight. At the SSE Arena in London, once more, you will have Josh Kelly battling David Avanesian in a highly anticipated showdown for the European Championship, airing live on DAZN in the United States. Really good fight. Should be a good one. Prediction, again, will be coming for that later this week. Also on the card, Anthony Fowler battles Jorge Fortea in junior middleweight action, and highly regarded heavyweight Johnny Fisher makes his professional debut. And in Las Vegas, airing on ESPN, and perhaps the fight of the week, the most promising action fight of the weekend, Mexicans Miguel Berchelt and Oscar Valdez will fight for the former's junior lightweight title. Should be an amazing showdown based on styles and just how well they potentially will clash. Prediction for that as well coming later this week. On the card, you'll also see Gabriel Flores Jr. taking on Jason Velez in junior lightweight action as well. So, some stuff to look forward to there. Hopefully, we get some good, clean decisions. Nobody takes any more punishment than they need to. And we can just have some nice, fun, human violence, okay? Please. Anyway, what were your takeaways from the weekend? Who do you think shined brightest? What were your biggest wow, holy crap moments? Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, be on the lookout for my predictions later this week for the fights I mentioned previously. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, jcalderon_JOB. You can also email me at jonboxing@gmail.com. And as always, until next time.